Good morning to all, and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the information session for the working group on DSI, the first one. As you know, just over a week, you will all meet in Geneva from 14 to 18 November to carry out what you decided in COP 15 in December in Montreal. Just a bit of housekeeping for our webinar this morning. It is being recorded, and the chat will be used for technical issues and need for assistance only. Questions on process or clarification only, as this is not a webinar on substantive matters. So we urge you to please refrain from having a parallel conversation in the chat. Post your questions on process and documents. The Secretariat is monitoring them. The page where documents can be found is indicated at the bottom of the slide. And I will thus move on to look at the agenda that we have for this morning. We will have the opening and welcome, and then take a look at the mandate from COP15, as well as the objectives of the working group. And then we proceed to look at the documents that will be considered in the meeting in Geneva, and then the organization of work and schedule. And we will then open up for questions and answers, as well as the closure and thanks. With that, may I then move on and ask David, the acting Executive Secretary, to give us the welcoming and opening remarks. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Tauko, and good day to all. We look forward to beginning again, or restarting the exciting work on digital sequence information at the first meeting of the working group in a week's time. As Tauko said, this is an extremely important meeting coming up, a full intergovernmental meeting under the convention. As you know, we've been looking at this issue of digital sequence information on genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits from digital sequence information on genetic resources since it was first raised at COP13. COP14 was put in process a series of discussions that then led to really this, I think, what we can say is a landmark decision at COP15, part of the package for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So as we know, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework includes reference to the fair and equitable sharing of benefits from digital sequence information on genetic resources, both in Goal C and in Target 13. And then we have this decision 15.9, which establishes a multilateral mechanism and a global fund, and sets up a process which includes, of course, at its heart, this working group to further develop and operationalize that mechanism and that fund. And that's the process that we'll be engaging in next week. I think it's important that we all come to Geneva with the mandate that we have from COP15 very clear, and ready to make substantial advances going forward. We know that these discussions are going to be complex. This will be an opportunity, the first opportunity for, again, governments to come together, the parties to come together, to look at the full range of issues that were identified at COP15 and have discussions on those with a view to moving towards agreement so that that agreement can be finalised at the second meeting of the working group next year in preparation for COP16. So I won't take further time now, just to say that I look forward to seeing everyone again shortly in Geneva for some, I hope, exciting and stimulating and encouraging discussions. Thank you very much, and back to you, Tauko.
Thank you, David. I'll now look at the mandate that you have received from the COP15 for this working group. As David just pointed out, we have the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, within which DSI is included as part of the package. And then we've got within that the Goal C and Target 13 Decision 15/4. And we have also the establishment of a multilateral mechanism on DSI, which was Decision 15/9. And this was welcomed by by the Nagoya Protocol MOP 4. And then we've got Decision 15/9, within which it was agreed that benefits from the use of DSI should be shared fairly, unequitably. It was also decided to establish, as part of the framework, a multilateral mechanism for benefit sharing from the use of DSI, and it included a global fund for DSI. And parties then also decided to establish a fair, transparent, and time-bound and inclusive process to further develop and operationalize the mechanism. And this is all to be finalized at COP16. And working group will also then examine issues in the annex to this decision. And here is just an overview of those issues that have been then identified as important, and they pertain to the fund, the mechanism, and also the data and the various aspects around them. You'll see, for instance, the governance of the fund. There is the issue of its relationship with Nagoya Protocol. There is the issue of the roles and rights and interests of stakeholders. And so this is what we will then be considering in the working group next week. May I then please proceed and then give over to Charlotte to introduce for us the documents for the working group. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Tauko. Good morning, afternoon, or evening to everybody. It's a real pleasure to see you all again. Well, meet you again. I can't see you, but I'll see you soon. So I'm going to present just the various documents. If we can move on to the next slide. Please, next. Yeah. So first of all, these two documents are the agenda and the provisional agenda. They are posted. The link is in the chat, so it's easy enough to find. And by the way, there is another document in the other documents tab, which covers all the information for participants, practical information as well. So now onto the substance of the topic itself. We have several documents, as you can see. Previous slide, please. And basically from paragraph 20 and 21 of Decision 59, the Secretariat called for submissions of views, as you recall, from the annex. So what we got in the first quarter of this year is we had 20 parties, 1 non-party, and 38 stakeholders who submitted views on 16 issues related to DSI, the ones that are listed in the annex to the decision. So as you can imagine, there was a bit of an avalanche of views and information, and we had to organize it and try to classify it in a way that was digestible and hopefully useful for everybody to actually follow. So as such, the Secretariat came up with 5 groupings. So if you can move forward 2 slides to the graphic, please. Yeah, thank you. And so we have a schematic representation basically of the multilateral mechanism here that you can see. And we've split it in the modality and functioning and the issues where from the annex were fitted into those 5 groupings. So hopefully it makes it easier to follow and to sort of triage the information. So here you can see if we go back maybe one, we have the contribution to the fund, the box A. So that includes the triggering points for benefit sharing, which is issue B, and then C, the contributions to the fund. Some aspects of little n, which is the role and interest of industry and academia, also fitted best in that box A of contributions. The box B or grouping B is the disbursement of the funds. So in this grouping, you can find little e, the disbursement of monetary benefit, including information on geographical origin as one of the criteria. And there were also some aspects of little m, which is the roles, rights, and interests of Indigenous people and local communities, including associated traditional knowledge, also fitted best in this grouping. Grouping C concerns non-monetary benefit sharing. So within this grouping, you have little f, non-monetary benefit sharing, including information on geographical origin as one of the criteria. Issue little h, the capacity development and technology transfer, and issue little o, the linkages between research and technology and the multilateral mechanism on benefit sharing. The 4th box from the graphic is D, governance. So within this, we have quite a few issues that fitted in there. So little a, governance of the fund, little I, monitoring and evaluation and review of effectiveness, little p, principles of data governance, and then the aspects from little m and n, the role, rights, and interests of Indigenous people and local communities, including associated traditional knowledge, and the role and interest of industry and academia, the ones that didn't fit in grouping A or B fitted nicely in grouping D. The last grouping is the box that's kind of on the side in the graphic. So it's little e is the relationship to other approaches and other systems. So we have the potential to voluntarily extend the multilateral mechanism to genetic resources on biological diversity, the other policy options for the sharing of the benefits from the use of DSI, including as identified through further analysis and as referred in paragraphs 6 and 7 of Decision 59. We also have the interface between the national systems and the multilateral mechanism, the relationship with the Nagoya Protocol, and the adaptability of the mechanism to other resource mobilization instruments or funds. So if we go back to the previous slide, please. So this, the previous one, the one with the document, the list of documents, thank you. So we use those groupings basically in the synthesis. So this is document add 1. So this is the synthesis of views pursuant of to the decisions. And I'll also let you know that all submissions are available online. So if you want to go and read things in more detail, there's plenty of reading there with all the submissions. The next document I'll talk about is add 2. So from paragraph 22A from the decision, the Secretariat commissioned the services of a consultant from the University of Strathclyde's School of Law and to look at those funds, and they ended up looking at 13 different funds. So obviously they include the ones that are suggested in the Decision 59, but there were also other ones that were deemed relevant by experts, and also the people from the fund that the consultant talked to suggested other other mechanisms. So 13 funds altogether were covered, and the executive summary of the compilation of lessons learned can be found in document add 2. Here I will note that there is a revision version of this document that is in the process of being posted. So hopefully later today, tomorrow, I'm assuming at the latest. Some details were adjusted here and there. There's nothing major that was modified, but we wanted everything to be absolutely accurate. So there is a Rev 1 that will be posted soon. So keep an eye out and make sure you print to write the latest version of this document. The full version of this compilation of lessons learned will be the document end/1, and it will be posted in the coming days. We apologize for the delay. As I was saying, there's a lot of information. Everything needs to be double and triple checked. And so look out for the posting of this document. It is being finalized and cleared, and then we'll go to the editors. So pulling all this information is the main document for this meeting in terms of substance, which is document CBD/WGDSI-1/2, which is the overview of the information gathered further to decision 59 and the key points for consideration by the working group on the benefit sharing from the use of DSI. So this document contains 3 sections. The first one is a background section on the decision and the ensuring work. The second one explains the 5 groupings, and then it pulls together the main points submitted from the views submitted and from the compilation of lessons learned into one hopefully comprehensive and concise document. And then the third section proposes a way forward for the working group, and it covers some of the information that Tauco is going to present, I believe. Finally, most recently posted is the Add 3 document, which is the initial information from the commissioned studies. So this document explains the approach the Secretariat has taken for the work requested in paragraphs 22B and 22C of Decision 59, which will basically call the studies, right? So this paragraph B is the analysis and modeling of the multilateral mechanism and potentially other options. And then 22C is the options for revenue generating measures, so the trigger points along the value chain, right? Very briefly, these 2 studies are tightly, they're interrelated, and they also request an overlapping expertise. And so the approach we took was to pull this into one procurement, which will end up with one report covering both studies. The value of the contract is quite high. This is not a small amount of work, as you can imagine. And so we had to procure this outside of our offices. It's a lengthy process, and so you will find the details in Add 3 of the procurement, which will be finalized hopefully and very soon. But there's no update on the work itself as of yet. If there are any updates between now and the meeting, we will update you in Geneva. So this is all the documents. Document 1/2 is the main one that pulls everything together, and I will drive your attention towards that one. But it's quite a lot of information to read and digest already. So thank you very much. Tauco, back to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was quite a lot of information, and we hope that you all have now a clearer idea of the documents prepared for the working group meeting. The next item on our agenda is to take a quick look at the organization of work for the meeting. And as you can see in front of you, we've got the agenda there. We have the opening of the meeting as item 1, moving on to organizational matters, as well as election of officers. And then we will have the one substantive agenda item that will be considered by the working group, which is issues for further consideration as set out in the annex to decision 15/9. And once deliberations on that has concluded, we will then take on agenda item 4, other matters, and then proceed to the adoption of the report, item 5, and the closure of the meeting, item 6. I would just like to look at the organization of work in terms of schedule. For day 1, we are going to have an opening plenary that would take into consider agenda items 1 and 2, and these will be quite a short plenary, approximately 60 to 90 minutes, and there will be an opportunity for high-level opening statements from regional groups as well as major groups. So at this stage, we would just like to have the overarching high level of political statements. And then the chair will establish the committee of the whole. You recall that generally we've got 2 working groups. So consider these 2 working groups and coming into one, given that we only have one substantive agenda item to consider. And then, and so all matters to that agenda item 1 will be considered in the established in the committee of the whole, and where then which will be facilitated by 2 co-chairs, which will be elected in the opening plenary. And shortly after that establishment, the chair will then adjourn the meeting and immediately convene the committee of the whole to consider agenda item 3. If we look at the work of the committee of the whole, as I've said, they will consider agenda item 3. So it's a subgroup of the meeting plenary, and then it will be continue its work for the remainder of the morning and the afternoon session. The co-chairs would have been introduced already, and then they will introduce now agenda item 3 and open the floor for complete first reading of the working group document. And in this complete reading, we expect then to hear from parties, the regional groups, and also all other major groups to then present us their reflections and insight on the working document that has been introduced to you by Charlotte's CBD working group /1/2. And after hearing all your reflections on that document, the co-chairs may establish a contact group or contact groups as necessary to advance the work. And so our work then will commence for the next day, and the agenda will become adaptive from there on. We envisage then maybe to have later on in the week a plenary of the committee of the whole to consider the CRPs that will come out of the work of the contact group, which will then go to the main plenary for adoption into SL documents. With that, we and just need to point out also then that is the organization of work. With regard to the first day, there will be a opening reception that is hosted by the Swiss government for delegates both from the DSI working group and the AJ working group. And so with that, we have now completed the information part of our meeting this morning, and I will now open the floor for any questions that you may have. Just a reminder for the question and answers, please keep your microphone and video closed. The chat box is for questions. Raise your hand, and we will then enable the microphone or video or type in the chat. And it's important to point out that at this point, if you have a question in French or in Spanish, please feel welcome to take the floor in English, in French or Spanish, and we will then try to provide the answers for you. The floor is open. Please ask your questions now. Thank you.
There's a question in the chat from Ping. Where is the reporting line for the committee of the whole? Is it to COP, to Substa, or any working group set up during COP15?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Where is the reporting line for the committee of the whole, to COP, to Substa, or any working group set up in the COP15? They apologize, they were not at COP15.
Yeah, well, as I've outlined, the committee of the whole is but a construct for efficiency. In a general setting, there will be the plenary and then 2 working groups if the agenda items are many. Since we've only got one substantive agenda item, we will have the main plenary in which we will be doing all the sort of formal, the opening and all of enclosure, then constitute the committee of the whole, which will consider item 3, and then contact groups will be established, which will then develop the CRPs, which will be adopted by the committee of the whole and transmitted to the main plenary, chaired by the presidency of the COP, and there the documents will then be approved as EAL documents. So the committee of the whole, as such, will not. It has no relation to the COP, whereas the working group is the one that will transmit its recommendation to the second working group, and then the meeting of the second working group will then transmit its outcome to the concerned party at the 16th meeting. Thank you. I hope that was clear.
There are more questions in the chat, I believe. So will the committee of the whole, the COW, and the contact groups be open to observers? Do you want to take that one, Taufo?
Yes. We will continue with the established rules of procedures. The committee of the whole will be the same as what will happen in a normal sub-working group of the meeting. And contact groups, the rules there remain as has been always. So, and it's maybe important to point out that the committee of the whole, there will be interpretation, whereas in the, or rather translation, whereas in the contact groups, that will only be taking place in English.
There's a question on informal events on DSI, one organized by the Meridian Institute and one by the GIZ in the past month. Will the reports or summaries of these events be made available as info documents to all parties? I can answer, you can answer.
Yep, proceed, Charlotte.
Yes, so there were indeed informal events on DSI. Those reports or summaries will be considered for posting as other documents if they are requested by the organizers or by a party to the Secretariat.
Any other questions in the chat?
How many
there was one.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry, go ahead. There was one again about the contact groups, if observers will be able to participate or observe.
Yeah, the way I have answered that is that we will follow the established rules of procedures. And of course, it will also be at the prerogative of the chairs of those contact groups or the chairs of the committee of the whole.
And there's another question about how many contact groups will be approximately established during the working group?
At this stage, we cannot fully say how many, because that will depend on what we will receive in the first complete reading. That will help us then to determine where is the areas of divergence and confluence, and what's the view of the meeting about the document and where it is going, and then we can prepare the non-paper. And so definitely we don't expect 10 contact groups. It will be a number that is manageable within the work that is set out in working group document DSI-1/2. Yeah, perhaps that of course depends on what we'll hear. We have there are clusters, as was outlined by Charlotte in her presentation. So since if there is agreement, and in the plenary we pick up that there is agreement that parties are happy with those clusters or propose other clusters, that could be one way of looking at perhaps splitting up the work.
Related to contact groups, someone is asking, it is my understanding that there is no more than 2 contact groups held at the same time. Is this correct?
That is correct. We must also take into account that our meeting is taking place same time that the working group on AJ is taking place. And so we have to be cognizant of that. And also just to allow that for delegates, that may be only 1 or 2, so that we can have fair chance of representation. Thank you.
There's another question. Is there an expectation that the working group will produce some recommendations already, or rather will it prioritize elements and ideally create a roadmap for future work in view of COP16?
Thank you for that question. As I just outlined, the working group has 2 sessions in terms of from the mandate, that there will be working group 1, and then it will have next year working group 2. At this stage, if the working group, of course, complete its work in this first meeting, then they have to prepare a recommendation that they can further advance in the second working group next year, and then transmit that recommendation to the COP for consideration. However, in the real world, most probably at this stage, the working group may consider what is in front of it in regarding agenda item 3, and come up with some. There may be some work to be done intersessionally. There may be areas that we can already agree upon in this working group, and there may be areas for further work that can then be transmitted to this meeting of the working group, the second one, and there then finalize everything and pull everything together into recommendation for the COP. So there are various iterations of what can play out in Geneva.
As a follow-up question to that question, somebody asked, do you foresee further working group meetings other than the ones planned for working group 2? If this working group 1 meeting gets too complicated, as you said, in the real world?
Again, the Secretariat is at your service. If parties feel that that is necessary, it is up to them then to decide what modality will be used to ensure that there is adequate time, given the decision that the mandate includes a time boundedness to this issue, and that they have to complete their work by COP16. We must also take into account that this working group is taking place within the frame of the work of the convention, and there are so timing of such a, say they agree on another meeting, it becomes an issue. But surely it's up to the parties to decide which modality they would use. Is if they agree that there are interstitutional work that must be carried out, and they have to deliberate on that then in the meeting and agree to what mechanism they will use. Thank you. Any other questions?
No other
Alexander?
questions in the chat. Not so far.
Counting 1. Counting 2. Counting 3. Are there no more questions?
No more questions. I think we can wrap up.
Yeah. So we see no more questions. Thank you very much. And we will now proceed to our last item. Thank you all for making the time to be in this in attendance today. The webinar is now over, and we hope that you are empowered and have all the information that you needed to prepare yourself for the work ahead of us in Geneva. As you can see, it's quite a lot of document, quite a lot of information that will be digested and worked through for us to have then a good product in Geneva. So wish you a very good day, and we remain available for questions if they arises, and feel free to please reach out to us. Bon voyage to all of you, and the webinar and slides will be posted on the website within the next few days. Thank you so much.